So if you're like me and probably many others across the world, currently in lockdown or quarantine, whatever you might want to call it, you might be doing some really weird stuff. But most of us are also working and or studying in this environment. And over the last 2 weeks, I have replaced an incredibly chunky work Windows powered laptop for something that's new. And it's this, the Huawei Matebook 13 2020. And in this video, what I want to do is give you my review having used this over the last 2 weeks. Now, if you are thinking about upgrading or buying a new laptop, in my opinion, there are 5 really important things that are worth considering. And those 5 points I want to focus on in this review. Number 1, the portability. Number 2 is the display. Number 3 is performance. Number 4 is battery life. And the 5th is the pricing. And what I want to do is use those 5 elements of considerations when looking at upgrading or buying a new laptop in this review. So let's take a closer look at the Huawei Matebook 13 2020. So first, let's talk about portability, because in my view, I think this is pretty important. Think about the scenarios where you'll be traveling, working in various situations and places with your laptop. You want it to be portable, and you'll be glad to know that the Huawei Matebook 13 actually does really well in this area. It has, first of all, a slim body, and everything is packed quite tightly inside. It has a 14.9mm body with really tapered, smooth edges throughout, so it's easy to handle. It's an ultra slim Windows powered laptop. The other interesting thing on the front is that you'll notice that the logo has been changed. So we now have just the writing for Huawei as opposed to the previous year, which had the logo and writing. And I think this looks quite simple, quite chic at the same time. Notice that the 2 rubber feet on the back are raised slightly higher than the ones on the front. And this helps for a couple of reasons. Number 1, ergonomically, it makes typing on this laptop quite easy, and it also raises it to help with ventilation. Now, as far as ventilation is concerned, this has the shark fin 2.0 fan. There's also a good set of speakers, Dolby Atmos speakers, that are both loud and clear. Now, 2 areas which I don't want compromised in portability, pretty important for a laptop, are the keyboard and the trackpad, and you'll be happy to know both of those are very good. To begin with, the keyboard is really good considering the small form factor. It doesn't feel sort of tight, it feels spacious, and the keys are well spaced. You have a good travel between the keys, and it also has a satisfying click or thud every time you press on one of the keys. Now, there is backlighting as well, and that's going to be obviously important when you're working in low light or in the dark. But one of the things I would have liked to see is Huawei include an inverted T-style arrow keys. It just makes it easier. The other thing is the trackpad. The trackpad is actually very good. It's responsive, it's precise. Above the keyboard, you'll notice a power button, and that also doubles up as biometric for the Windows Hello support. So it's got a fingerprint scanner, and once you press that power button and it registers your fingerprint, it will take you straight through to where you need to go. And that's such a convenience. It makes life incredibly easy. Around the sides, you'll notice that there are some ports. There's actually only 2 USB Type-C ports. One of them is reserved only for charging, and the other one can be used for peripherals. There aren't very many options here, but Huawei have included a dongle right out of the box that you can use to pair up a USB-A to the laptop through the USB-C port. Other than that, you also have a 3.5mm headphone jack. So if ports are important to you, you need to be aware of that with this model. The Huawei Matebook 13 has a metallic body, and it's got a weight of around about 1.3 kg. So it's not incredibly light, but it is light enough for you to use, to pick up, and also to travel around as well. So number 2 in that list is the display, and the display is a pretty important part of choosing any laptop. To begin with, that display has a 3x2 panel, it sports a 2K resolution, and then it has an impressive 88% screen to body ratio. The Matebook 13 has one of the thinnest bezels on a 13-inch laptop. The colors, the saturation are all very good, and I think this is going to be great for media, for gaming, anything else that you need that display for. Now, as well as that, in the bezel you'll find on the front a front-facing camera. It's perfectly fine for video calls and anything else you might need that front-facing camera for. Now, another thing to mention is that the display sports a multi-touch support, which is another level of interactivity with the Windows operating system, and it actually does a good job. I didn't notice any lag whatsoever when it came to scrolling, selecting, so that's quite a good feature to be included on the display. Plus, Huawei have also incorporated something called eye comfort. So if you want to filter out some of that harmful blue level light, then this eye comfort is going to be really handy for those of you that are doing work from home or prolonged hours of e-learning. As far as the display is concerned, the only issue that I seem to have is when it comes to the fact that it doesn't have an anti-glare on that display. Next, point number 3, which is again a pretty important point when considering a laptop, and that is performance. I'm going to talk about hardware performance as well as software. So this particular model comes with the Intel Core i7. This is the 10th generation, so it's Intel's latest ultra-low power processor, and it has a CPU that's clocked at 1.8 GHz with the turbo boost support up to 2.3 GHz. Now that's paired up with, on this model, 16 GB of RAM and then 512 GB of SSD storage. Now, as far as graphics, on board you're going to find the NVIDIA MX250, and that combination means that this laptop can be used and pushed to a certain level and limit. In terms of day-to-day browsing, multiple applications, multiple sort of graphic intensive work, it performed pretty well. I even tested out some 1080p editing on this, and it had no issues with that whatsoever. One thing to note, however, is that the fans did kick in when playing games, and that was after about 10 minutes or so. So as far as software, right out of the box, this comes with Windows 10. If you're a Windows user, you'll be familiar with all the functions and features, but Huawei have also incorporated something called multi-screen collaboration, which is pretty unique to the Huawei Matebook 13, in the ability that you want to connect your Huawei device to the laptop itself. So I have a Mate 30 Pro. I connected that via NFC to my laptop. There are some actual practical uses for this. So for example, taking normal calls, or if you pair up with an app like TuTalk for video calls, it will use the front-facing camera on your Huawei Matebook 13. As well as this, you can use it for social media, and if you want to watch IGTV videos in full screen, you can simply press a button to have that shown on that beautiful display. Copy and paste, so I can be doing some research on my phone, copy that, and then in real time paste that into a document on my laptop. The other feature is drag and drop in this situation. So instead of uploading images to the cloud and then having to re-download them onto my laptop, I can simply hold the images that I want and drag them directly in a document. And I think this is going to be a real enhancer when it comes to the user experience. Next, let's talk quickly about the battery, because that's again a very important consideration in a laptop. So battery on this is pretty impressive. You have a 41.7 watt battery, and if you consider the size of this thing, that's a lot of battery to get in such a small form factor. In terms of battery life, what I was getting with light use, what I consider light use is like word processing, browsing, a bit of YouTube, bit of music, was between 6.5 to about 8 hours worth of battery. It does reduce depending on your activities. So if you're doing editing, playing games, that battery life will reduce. So it really depends on your case scenario. But right out of the box, they do include a 65 watt power brick and a USB-C charging cable, and that can be used, both combination can be used on newer devices like the Huawei P40 Pro. But if you're going to use those to charge up the Matebook 13, then you're going to be able to get a full charge in just under 2 hours if you're going from zero. Finally, the all-important issue of pricing. So In my opinion, what you want to do is balance out when considering a new laptop, the specs with the asking price. And I think the Huawei Matebook 13 does a good job here, because in this part of the world, we have two different variations. We have an i5 with 8GB of RAM, 512GB of SSD. That will set you back 2,999 dirhams. If you want more, you can go with the i7, 8GB of RAM with 512GB of SSD, the NVIDIA GeForce MX250 graphics, and that will set you back 4,499 dirhams. So there are two different spec variations plus pricing, and I think they will appeal to a majority of people who are looking for this type of laptop for work, you know, home situations, or for studies. Ultimately, I'd love to know your thoughts, so be sure to leave your comment down below in the comment box. And if you're new around here, I'd love to see you again, so be sure to smash that subscribe button, hit like to see more content like this over on YouTube. And until next time, you've been watching me, EMKWAN, here with the Huawei Matebook 13 2020. Until next time, peace and blessings.